like all the way through school, got to high school and made varsity as a freshman. And my coach came to me and was like, I know who you are. If you get in a fight in school, you're off the team. So I just did it off school. But the anger still was there. But I had an outlet through sport. And made Junior World Cup as a sophomore. Got out of high school, kind of was lost because of everything I'd been through. Decided to serve my country, did 8 years in the Army, and ended up in a very horrible situation where I was in an Army base where it was an experiment during that time to see if they could rehabilitate men. So they had the option of going to jail or going to this Army base. And women were told in basic training, don't get sent there, and that's where I got sent. So it was basically hell on earth. And so I came out of the military very angry and lost, completely lost. I just hated Christians, hated Christianity, hated anything to do with people at all. And so we'll continue that story later.
And so sport became this place in a way that perhaps God guarded and protected you, kept you out of worse spaces,
Yeah.
maybe?
I would have been in a gang. I would have been, it would have been a lot worse if I hadn't had that coach that was like, I'm watching you.
Yeah.
So.
And I bet you have that coach too, like that name, the worst coach and the best coach. And those names are there for you too. So tell me, now mentoring coach might be kind of like a new definition for us, and we'll get to that later. But tell me why that passion that you have for helping others become this type of legacy coach, why is that so important?
So there's two reasons. One is when I came back out of the Army, I had really messed up my life. And so I was on the verge of living on the streets at that time. And I met this lady named Miriam who was a missionary to Africa, Kenya, Africa, with the Navigators. And for some reason, she really liked me. And she's like, I would really like you to come live with me and my husband. And I was like, no. Christians, absolutely not. And she just kept asking me. And I'm like, I kept saying no. And then I got to the point where I was actually going to be on the street. And so it was the lesser of two evils. And over the next 2 years, I saw God. Like, I saw someone who lived as Christians in a real way. And if you know the Navigators, they're into discipleship. And so they were the first people to tell me they loved me, and they were the first people to tell me they were proud of me. And that changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. And so over 2 years, I lived with them while they had their kids before they went back to the mission field, and saw what discipleship does to someone, what friendship does to them. So someone long-term being in your life, what that does to someone. And it changed my life. I became a Christian because of that.
At one point, I believe, did you tell me that you called it friendship evangelism?
Friendship evangelism
Yeah.
is what the Navigators call it. And that is the way I try to live my life. It's friendship.
So would you say that for you, that kind of concept of friendship evangelism, which sounds like life on life, is how you imagine that mentoring coach?
Yeah, absolutely.
So here we are, and I just want to pull this back. In whatever space you are an influencer, a steward. In what space are you this friendship evangelist, this disciple maker, this influencer, this steward of hearts? Be thinking about that for yourself. So Thuy, in this time, I mean, how old were you when you were married?
28.
So in this few 5 years up to now, tell me, nobody? Oh, nobody? I thought that was a good one.
It was good. It was good.
Okay. All right. Clearly doing better at this. Okay, so in the time since you were 20, right. Okay. Oh, it's because you're so youthful looking, and nobody knows. All right, here we go. So in that time, not to now, but just in the next couple years of your life, what have you been doing with that? with that passion?
So after Miriam and Jack left, I was kind of at a crossroads again, thinking, okay, I didn't go to college, I have no skills. I was a tank mechanic in the Army. I can't take that onto the mission field. So I went to Kenya to visit them, fell in love with the country, and was like, well, what do I do? And then through God events, I heard about this guy who went to Africa teaching soccer to spread the word, and I was like, I could do that. So 1998, I started coaching overseas in refugee camps and things like that. I'm very invested in, obviously, traumatized children. And in one refugee camp, I met this little boy who did the clinics with me, and just like the worst poverty in this refugee camp. And at lunchtime, these kids don't have food. And this little boy came up to me with this old apple, with this big grin on his face, and puts it up to me. And it's like, you, eat. And it still breaks my heart today. And it was in that moment I realized the impact of sport on people. Like, Nelson Mandela is not kidding when he said it will impact the world. This little boy has given me probably the food he has for the week. And he's got a smile on his face, and he is happy. Bringing that smile is the best thing that we can do as sports people. That is where God's love is that apple is the representation for me, for everything I do. Because I want to be honoring that boy that gave me his food. And so that is when I realized we have to mesh what we do in sports with the relationship with the people around us. Because it's not just we go in there, we do a clinic, we leave. That boy hopefully still remembers me, right? That's the influence we want to have.
So I hear Thuy talking about one of the points on the triangle. Which one? That the redeemed triangle, the third triangle. What's she talking about there?
Relationship?
Yeah, relationship. Yes. Using her talents in the image of God, bringing the image of God, the relationship of Christ, through her talents to relationship with others. That's what I hear. That's so cool. Okay, so you see this gap, and I'll just go ahead and say, so you've been coaching at the high school level, at the collegiate level, multiple sports. You've been coaching at the international level, and we'll talk about that actually a little bit later, a story that you have. But even in the international, professional level of yet another sport. But so tell me, at the last conference, you saw yet another gap. Can you tell us what you've been doing in the past year based on what you saw at conference last year?
Yes, last year we had a guy from England named Steve Jones who was here. And he was talking about something called all-ability sports, which I had never even heard about. So it's sports for those that aren't what we call able-bodied, so those that might not have a limb or in wheelchairs or whatnot. So he showed me blind soccer and a couple wheelchair basketball, and I was hooked. I was like, this is amazing. So I went home, I checked in my area and found a power soccer team that was just starting up, and I'm coaching that. So power soccer is power wheelchairs, and they play in a gymnasium, so it's indoor on regular flooring. And then I heard about something called amputee soccer, and so I went to a clinic in Texas about it, and now on the 19th we'll have the first ever amputee soccer clinic in Portland, in conjunction.
Come on.
In conjunction with the Thorns, which is the female pro soccer team. And then we are actually we are building towards the first women's amputee World Cup next year. It is set, and we've got we have I think 30 countries, and we're working to get 20 more countries involved in that. I'll be in 5 countries by the end of the year, starting programs. So yeah, so let God work, you guys.
So imagine the freedom and the possibility of these hearts in all ability. That dream of playing and maybe not having the space or the arena to play yet until now. But now imagine this space, because it is a gap. Where are the coaches? Where are those people that will step into this gap and lead through that third triangle? I mean, really. Because we're talking about disciple multiplication here, aren't we? And so that I think it's this FCA phrase of to and through the coach. I mean, there really is this opportunity and gap as mentoring, disciple making, relational evangelizing coaches. Am I right? Okay, so now what we'd like for you to do now, grab these sticky notes if you want to, and at your tables, I want you to go through a little journey.